A small vignette about Japan. This one is about going to my every morning cafe and standing in line, and the staff there know me, so they automatically tell me what my order is, and most of it's prepared before I get it to the counter. And then I carefully arrange it on the tray because I order a lot and there's not a lot of space on the tray. I sit down and I read the New York Times and the Japan Times every morning, pretty much. And I really enjoy that, starting the day 2 hours of relaxing with a large iced coffee and a medium iced coffee, both, and a pumpkin tart. It's wonderful. And one day, I tend to sit at the end of a counter because I get more leg room that way, and the counters are too short into both directions. Leg length and leg height, they're too short for my size because they're size for Japanese. And so I tend to sit at the edge of the counter, and sometimes it's the counter edge away from the door, and sometimes it's the counter edge towards the door. It depends on where other people have already filled up. And this particular day, I was the edge toward the door, and there's a 3 meter wide avenue, and people line up on the opposite side of it from where my foot is sticking out. And that particular morning, a dressed in black elderly woman, looked 70 years old, looked old for Japanese, which means she's quite old. And the thing that stood out was she had 4 necklaces of gigantic looking pearls and dozens of gold and silver rings on one hand. And she had this sort of high nose, immediate snobby look, and like she was demonstrating her pearls, as if the entire meaning and worth of her life was whatever pile of money had bought them. And so you immediately took a cartoon atmosphere toward her and her life, seeing that she had voluntarily, on her own, before she ever met me, made herself into a cartoon. At any rate, she complained about my foot sticking out 20 centimeters from the edge of the table. Now, this is the way people who are insecure in power or think they are high status in society and they didn't earn it, like a lot of lives, unfortunately. This is their way of making themselves, demonstrating their superiority by putting down the weakest person they can find in the room. And I'm a foreigner in Japan, so I'm vulnerable. So she told me that to put my foot back, ordered me to put my foot back under the table. And I said in pretty good Japanese, I'd be happy to do so if you didn't have such an ugly big mouth. And I have a big, commanding voice. And so I said it so that at least 500 people in a 100-meter diameter could hear me. And I laughed, my big, raucous laugh. And I said, look, I know some of the most famous plastic surgeons in Japan. They can help you. And then she was dumb enough to say something else. And I said, do you have an off button for the mouth, or it just goes on forever? Again, in my big voice. By this time, everyone in the cafe was looking at her mouth. They knew me because I go there every day for years. And then she shut up at that point, and on the way out, half a dozen of the regular customers put their hand on my shoulder and winked at me on the way out. They were unwilling to say anything because she probably is the wife of some stupid, liberal Democratic Party politician, and very Yakuza connected. So you don't want to really dig it in. But in a quiet, inconspicuous Japanese way, they put their hand on my shoulder and winked support, because I could say what they couldn't say. Now, I don't have any big argument with a woman. I don't know anything about her life, and she's married to an arrogant, rich snob government guy who doesn't do anything but look for corruption possibilities. So you got to feel sorry for someone in that kind of moral sewer buying pearls to look like she has any sort of status other than a sewer rat. A sewer rat with four gigantic. I mean, the pearls, they must have been plastic because they were so big. They look like golf balls. Or maybe, porcelain entombed testicles of the men she had emasculated by telling them their feet were sticking out 20 centimeters too far in a 3-meter wide aisle. Even in America, people who didn't know me and who crossed me in ways that they normally get away with rapidly developed an aversion to crossing me in public because the voice that I come up with is just gigantic. I tried out, this is one of my other videos, I tried out for the MIT Choral Society because I sang a lot in high school, not professionally or anything, just because I like singing. And they told me it was a way to meet girls. At the moment that they told me this freshman, sophomore year, I had zero interest in girls. Or I wouldn't say zero, I would say like minus 50 interest in girls. They were the least useful, interesting thing in my life that kept appearing, except for a couple of physicists, graduate students who I happened to help in a project for a professor, who were smart cookies, and I learned a lot from them. So they were fun, but you didn't notice they were women until 6 months later because they were so smart. But the average run-of-the-mill woman wearing pretty dresses and trying to, indirectly display their ass shape or their breast is just a colossal waste of time and a cost to men in their entire lives that wastes so much attention. Maybe when we were primates in the trees it helped, but with 7 billion people moving to 14 billion, we don't need any more of that stuff. So at any rate, I joined the Choral Society, but you had to be approved. You had to audition. And they give you a sight reading thing, and I couldn't do that. And so he gave me a long list of things, of sheet music, and said, well, pick one. And this was his indirect way of saying, pick one you already know. So I did. And then I started to sing, and I didn't get but like 4 measures into it, which is like 20 seconds. And he waved his hand over the piano, and he said, you can stop now. And he said, where did you get that voice? And I said, you mean it's not very good? And he said, no, I'm not talking about its quality. I'm talking about your volume. He said, we'll. So I said, do I flunk the audition? And he said, no, there are going to be pieces and places and pieces where we can use somebody to shout down everyone else in the chorus. He said, I tell you what, if the rest of the chorus is getting off tune or something, and I point to you, you just do your normal thing, and no one will be able to hear the other 150 of them.